Myers Metal Detectors, located in sunny Tampa, Florida, where we sell nothing but fun and adventures, treasure hunting gear, and anything you can imagine for metal detecting. Give us a call, 813-237-1939. Happy hunting and dig deeper.
Live from sunny Florida, it's Treasure Talk.
And welcome, folks. Welcome to another exciting edition of Treasure Talk. And Jeff, did we find our guest?
Well, I'm texting with him.
Okay.
He'll be here.
All right. Well, then I'll do our housekeeping, and then we can just chat a little bit. But we do have it there. I see him coming aboard there, so we can roll with it for sure.
Yeah, there he is.
As always, today's show is brought to you by your friends here at Myers Metal Detectors, where we sell fun and adventure. Of course, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed here by the Treasure Talk guest and member belong solely to the guest and member, not necessarily to Phil Myers, Jocelyn Myers, Myers Metal Detectors, or Jeff Monin. And, of course, the purpose of Treasure Talk is to promote the hobby of metal detecting and treasure hunting in all forms, and to educate our members in a fun, informative manner. And we're glad you're here on the show because we've got an excellent guest as always. Jeff lines them up and gets them done perfectly. So we're going to have fun tonight, and we're going to see a lot of stuff and hopefully learn something.
Well, I think tonight is really going to be an educational show because this is all about Terry in Minnesota, and we've got a killer slide presentation. So, a lot of times, people up north especially, they want to go and they want to hunt. I want to go find a cellar hole, but they don't know what they're looking for. I mean, they're looking for like their cellar door or something, and that's not necessarily what it is. So with what Terry has done, and he's put together a slideshow, and it shows different areas that he's detecting, so people know what it looks like and all that kind of stuff. So it should be really, really interesting tonight. Of course, we had help from Fred, so Fred had to, had to pitch in and help us because he's a genius when it comes to that kind of stuff. So
cool. And it looks like Eric Turner just said, I just received my E-Tract lower rod. Thank you for the calendar also. So Eric must be still running his E-Tract. That was an awesome detector, a little heavier than the ones made today, but still a great detector. That is not funny, Jim Bighorn. I'm going to have to boot him. Let's hide that. That's Big Poppy. We talk about him all the time. That's Big Poppy.
That's Big Poppy.
So what's on special?
Oh, yeah, let's get back to business. Yes, it's Father's Day coming up. So if you have a father or you want to be a father or you're not a father, you can get this special. And we've got specials on the Triple Score. Triple Score's got an awesome accessory pack. And that one we've got for $4.79. Don't buy it on my website because it'll be a little cheaper here. Just order off the phone because we're not allowed to advertise that. The same thing with the Legend. We have a special on that too. Just call me to find out about it. I don't want to take all the time because I could talk for hours just on different prices of different products. But we also have the Legend on special, the Legend Pro Pack. And what else do we have? Oh, the Mind Lab products. We have those. And hell, we'll do some Father's Day specials on Deus too, because I think that's what Terry runs. I think that's what he's using for his cellar hole hunting. But
I think he is, yeah.
Yes, because that's the super light, and once you learn that detector, extremely deep. And so are the Mind Lab products. The Mana course on special course continued $12.99, and so is the 900. If you want to upgrade your 800 to a 900, you don't want to go all the way high end. You can get the 900 for $898. So some steals right now. Of course, we've got a bunch of accessories, and I think Jeff, we're trying to get rid of most of the AT Pro accessories that we have because with Garrett going to the vortex detector. It's not going to be selling. I mean, I haven't sold many AT Pros or AT Maxes in a while anyway. But if you're looking for headphones or different coils or whatnot, if we have them in stock, we're going to blow those out. I'll probably just put a list of them on the Treasure Talk Facebook page. And if you don't have Facebook, just holler at me. I'll tell you what we got. But yeah, we want
Put
to
them
out.
put them on Florida Metal Detecting too.
Oh yeah, Florida Metal Detecting page. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And so we've got all kinds of specials. And of course, like the customer Eric who got the E-Track rod, he got a calendar. You're going to get a calendar. We still have a couple of those left. There's not many left of those, so they'll go quick. And of course, they'll have the, where's it at? We'll throw a Treasure Talk towel in there, the infamous towel there. If we can fit it in the box, we'll put that in there. With
Coveted. It's
coveted. Yes. Oh, and then here I got something else that we got here, and that's a big magnifier that we have.
How many times does it make it bigger?
I guess 2 times in a certain area in the middle is 6 times. It's large. And then if you don't mind last year's book, the the 2024 book, these two together are $19.95. So that's what I think that magnifier goes for. So you get a free book, free red book. If you're into coins, that's a good reference book for you to have. I like the hard too. So that would be a nice Father's Day gift too.
Yep. I see Derek Sherwin is in the chat, and I don't see Angie, so she must still be not feeling well. Derek, what's the story? And if she is not feeling well, please give her our best.
Absolutely.
So he will put that in the, and we see, Moonlight Graham. Moonlight Graham is stuck at LaGuardia.
Oh.
His flight was delayed.
Luis Villarreal says what you say all the time. If Phil doesn't have it, you don't need it. And that's right.
That's right. Sure. Well, let's bring on Terry so we can get things going here because we got a lot of ground to cover.
Yes, we do tonight. We certainly do. And we'll have to, it was 92, I think, here in Tampa today. So we'll see how cool it is up where Terry's at, for sure.
Yeah, it's probably it's the frozen north. But this man is what I consider to myself. I'm very, very lucky to be able to call this man friend. And he's very accomplished. And you all know him. You all love him. He's got a new book out. I think we'll be doing a giveaway tonight on Terry's new book about being a lawman. So let's bring on Terry Shannon. Hey there.
Welcome. Good evening, everybody. How you doing?
We're doing awesome. Good. So tell the folks where you're at and what the temperature is.
I heard that 92 thing. I don't think our thermometer goes up that high. Right now,
it was hot here today.
Low 50s. I think
low 50s?
Yeah, 52 to 55 has been the high today.
That's cool. That's good detecting weather, isn't it? If you're not
it's raining too,
Oh no, I was going to say if you're not in the water, you're not raining, it would be okay.
I was a wuss today. I stayed inside and got a lot of paperwork done.
Well, that's good. That's good because you got that new book.
On that new book too, you said about some giveaways. I will replace those. So give away at least a couple of them if you would. I'll send you a couple more for the giveaways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I forgot all about it. I apologize.
Nah, you ain't got nothing to apologize about. Not at all. Well, we got, thanks to our other friend, who now the Terminator, that's, of course, that's Fred Banky, now's the Terminator. Terry?
Oh, yeah. I heard all the stories.
I'll be back.
He's a good
maybe you didn't.
I'm lucky to have him for a friend.
Well, off camera, I'll ask you about a story, see if he told you, because I'm not going to say it on the air. So, anyways, we got he put together a real nice presentation of all the pictures and stuff that you sent, a slideshow. So, what we're going to talk about is what all you do in Minnesota. You're at home, so. Let's just get right into it, and you tell me when you want me to cue up the Terry
Anytime. What
Shannon's
I'm going to start
Northern
off with
Adventures.
is on the old Red River ox carts. You know, the Red River ox carts traveled from, Winnipeg down to Pembina through Fargo and on down to Minneapolis or St. Paul. And St. Paul at that time was called Pig's Eye. And it was named after a bootlegger that had lived in a cave down at St. Paul. He must have had good booze because they named the town after him. So,
Well, let's get this. Now you can.
okay, the story. What happened here? There was a fellow up by Winnipeg that decided to redo or to duplicate the Red River ox cart trail. He had the oxen and the cart and that stuff. And I happened to be driving down the road, and there he was, right by my house, right by the house there. So I went over and met him. He gave Gene and I both a ride in the ox cart, and he did not have any artifacts from the old trading posts or stuff like that. So that box that I'm holding right there is full of artifacts and stuff that I took from, the old trading post and gave it to him. And there was one item in there that apparently meant an awful lot to him, and I can't remember what it was. But anyway, he really, was excited about getting them.
Oh, very cool. So you ready for the next one?
Yep, please. Okay, this is I don't know why I got that in there, but this is a cooking pot that I got out at the old trading post. What happened? Like I said, the Red River ox carts, came. Well, they didn't originally come through our town, but they went, from Winnipeg and going to Fargo and then on down to Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Pig's Eye. And then in around 1860, there was the Indians went on the warpath, and there's about 100 of these ox carts stuck down at Pig's Eye or St. Paul, and they had to find another way home. And so what they ended up doing is coming right through our town, and so several of the rivers were named after them crossing that, and that they built a trading post just out of town. And the farmer that owns the land there is a good friend of mine. He called me up about 20 years and invited me out there to get that treasure coast. And I've been out there every year since then. I'm the only guy that ever goes out there, and it's just, it's really neat. And the guy was just such a good guy. We spent a lot of time together. And then he passed and turned it over to his daughter. And his daughter was a super gal, super family. And now she has turned it over to the boys. And what I did, one of the boys is married to a teacher. And so what I did is took everything that I found out at the ox cart or out at the trading post in the last few years and returned it to the farmer. And she's going to
cool.
a display, and this includes coins and everything. I didn't hold anything back. And go around to the different schools and give a presentation. Plus, they sponsor, ski trails and stuff like that out at their farm. So it's nice that it's there, and it won't be stuck in a closet or a drawer or something like that. It's going to be a nice display.
Mm-hmm.
Real pleased about that.
Very cool.
And I've given several talks, and a couple different TV stations up here have interviewed me on it. And if you look at that, that's a much younger Terry Shannon. Go on to the next one if you would.
Yeah, what detector you holding there? It looks like it's.
Well, that's the old Mine Lab Explorer.
I was going to say, Explorer.
Yeah, the old Explorer. That one go back. Got some history there, folks. I'm actually finding stuff out there that's older than I am, and that's kind of exciting.
Heck yeah.
So these ox carts were driven, by what they called the Matisse, and the Matisse were Frenchmen that married Indian ladies, and that's what started the ox cart. And these ox carts were built totally out of wood. There's no metal in them whatsoever, and they couldn't grease the wheels because the grease would pick up sand and act like sandpaper. So they were really noisy. They took along several axles with them when they traveled. And there's a story about a little church that just started service, and they could hear the ox carts coming. And the minister just stood up and said, "Well, folks, we'll see you next week." Canceled the service. But this picture here have different coins that I found, and it's not a good picture. I should have tried to take them out, but they're mostly seated. And I think the newest coin I found out there was like an 1864 2-cent piece. That was the newest. The other than that, everything was older than that. They're crotobells, and I got a bunch of them. I'm right here with. I've got several of these things, and these crotobells, they put them on. the ox carts and the old wagons and that stuff, and they would have warned, other wagons of them that that another ox cart was coming, and I think it's really funny because I bet you there's never been a hit and run with a wagon that had these crotobells, But the crotobells also were signs of good luck, and they were often, given to at a wedding. They would give them to the bride and groom. They give them a crotobel, and that. So it's kind of a neat recovery. I've got a bunch of them that I found at cellar holes and the old trading post.
Those are cool.
Yeah, they are. Like I said, you can.
That's a really good one there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I got a whole bunch of them here.
Well, you're
And that's
ready.
a crotobel, and that's an ox knob, and that ox knob is, and that was a small one. They actually come bigger than that, and they will screw that ox knob over the horn of an oxen. And they screw it really tight, and then there's actually a set screw on the side on a lot of them. They tighten it up, and then they saw the tip of the horn off, and that's to protect the oxen from hurting each other or hurting, the driver or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And these things are made out of brass, and boy, do they sound off when you hear that detector goes off one of them. You're rich. You got something made.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
I bet they
coin.
do.
Okay, this is one of 3 different boxes of stuff that I turned back to the trading post. You can see the padlocks up in the north. I looked them up. They go way back, and somewhere from the railroad. Lots and lots of shot shells, and I even found many of these shells that are solid brass. Shot shells that are solid brass all the way up. They go way. It's one of those things that they're just the trading post. It was 2 buildings out there, and they apparently both burnt down. And so what I need to do is get out there with a smaller coil because it's just, there's just so I know right where the trading post was, and then there was a second building. I think that was probably for the animals. And when they were using it for a pasture, now they're just actually hay. But it was a pasture, it would get cut down pretty far, and a lot of powder. I picked up an awful lot of powder just laying on the ground. And one night thing was I was out there one time and I was digging a target and I was down on my hands and knees, and I looked up and here's this little deer looking at me. He seen me from out in the woods and thought of something different, run out to check me out. It's just neat. Okay, now we're into the cellar holes, and this is a cellar hole. And these cellar holes, they go way back, they're in mid 1800s and that stuff. These are the pioneers where they, actually kind of homesteaded a place. And on these cellar holes, they did not live in the cellar. That wasn't part of the building. The building was on top. The cellar was, to keep the stuff cold, and often up there, there were log cabins, and often up there when they built a house on one of these cellar holes, they had actually built a second home, a smaller home close by because almost all of these burnt down. That's how they heated it was wood there, and when they burnt down in Minnesota, it's not uncommon for 30s, maybe even 40 below weather. And if their house burned down and they there's no motels to go to, so they'd actually, have a second little building around there. And this spot is just beautiful. I've got exclusive rights on that one too. The people let me go back, and I'll be out there tomorrow. And Fred and I were back there, had a good time. But go with the next one, if you would.
Okay, just give me 1 second. Explain to people what to look for when a cellar hole. Will you, Terry?
Okay, well, on the cellar holes, well, it's a big hole. You can't miss it when you're going through the woods and that stuff. But they would normally put these cellar holes up in high ground, on high ground, and they wanted, the hills and that stuff. They didn't want it flat. I suppose there's areas where they had it, but in our area, because they would dig back into the banks, to make a place for the cattle or the livestock, and they'd also, on this particular cellar hole, there's about 4 holes right in that one spot, and there's no clue to where they are. You just have to stumble. When you find out a hole, you'll know what it is.
Okay.
Sometimes just talking to the farmers, they'll tell me. Now, see here, this one here, there's probably, I think 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 different holes at this one site here. one down by the lake, which I think what they would do is harvest ice, And when I had my resort up in Canada, I had hired the natives to harvest ice during the winter, and I had an ice house where I put it in. It was a pretty big building, and we'd put layers of ice in there and then cover it with sawdust, and it would last all summer long. So that was a refrigeration. So I imagine they use, the ice and that stuff, in the cellar holes too to keep things cool. There's another cellar hole, and there's one huge one. I didn't include that picture, but I've got one that when I stand in the bottom of the hole, it's it's a lot deeper than I am. I'm 5'8", and it's got to be at least 6 foot or more. And on that one, I found a lot of stuff there, and I was the oldest coin I found in there was an an Indian head fatty, 1864, I think it was, and I know that there had to be a barn, and I haven't been able to locate that. I have an area that I think it might be, but there's just not a lot of junk there. When you find these cellar holes, when you go detecting, that detector is going to just be sounding off steady. I mean, I can't believe, you'd think that they would dump their garbage in one spot, but they don't. They have a 360-degree circle where they throw their old cans, stuff like that.
And that's where you need the small coil.
Big time small coil. And then plus, most of the cellar holes that I've got did burn down at one time. So you've got the ashes and the nails. And there's a story, these square nails, each of these square nails were, I should have brought them up, were handmade, and so they were valuable. And a lot of times if they were, wanted to move west or move something like that, they would burn the house down just to collect the nails. That's what the story was.
Very cool.
Yeah. And this one here, this one is part down by the water down there. And I would think that it goes right out to the water, that they use that to haul ice in and store the ice. But, I don't know. It's just an educated guess is what it is.
Right.
Yeah. And Fred was with me, and he took that picture right there. We're at another different cellar hole there. And I found a fisticle. I'll talk about that later. But that thin saw right there, I believe, is used for cutting ice.
Yeah, we've got a question here, Terry, from Tim Naylor. What's the average depth of the cellar holes?
Most of them, I would say, are probably between 5 and 6 feet deep.
Yeah. And they're probably filled in now, so you probably lost some of that.
Well, they're full of stuff, like if it burnt down, there's stoves down there, metal stoves and pipes. And what amazes me is like a saw like that, or even some of these axes that are coming up, that was a pretty expensive piece of equipment back in the day. And why?
Yeah.
I just, that just blows my mind. I've got some pictures of these big saws coming up, and the saws, there's 4 of them there, and there's the one I was holding back there, that's still out in the woods. I haven't hauled that one out yet. But now that would be an expensive piece of equipment, these old cross saws like that. And why abandon it? I mean, that, back in the day, money was pretty tight. You don't find a lot of coins at these places because they didn't have a lot of coins. And when they lost one, they looked for it, But the detector being on iron, when you get iron like that or steel, and that big, they sound off on the detector. And I always, I know that I've got a big.
Yeah, I think that would make a signal.
This one really blew me out. This is just a frame of a boot pistol, and I have one of them. I have one down in the basement there, but they wore them in their boot. That was their backup gun, and it's just a frame there. But it's just kind of a neat recovery. In fact, the one that I've got, I dropped it, and I have a bullet in my finger from that gun.
Oh, geez.
I go into the doctor, he's cleaning out the bullet hole there, and he said, "You're a lucky boy." And I said, I was pretty young at the time. And I said, "What do you mean, Doc? I could have missed me." This is pictures of basically jewelry. And you can see a part of a porcelain arm of a doll. And all the jewelry is and I haven't ever at a cellar hole found any precious metal. I just haven't.
Well, they probably didn't really have much.
No, they didn't have much. Like this is a pin, just a small pin. But look at how ornate that back then. Back then they had some pride. They took pride in what they were doing, and some of the jewelry is really pretty. And this is like a typical day out at one of the cellar holes. I'll find a couple of axe heads, a bunch of lantern tops. I mean, my God, they're all over the place, and pottery and stuff like that. And I often, if I have a real good day, I'll come home and I'll set it all out on my deck back at the house, and then call Jean and ask her to take a look at it, because I'm all excited of my treasure. And I remember this one time she looked at all this stuff and she said, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" And I said, "That's the dumbest question I've ever heard in my life. You want to know that I don't have any idea." But it's treasure, and I'm all in a home. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I read, these are axe heads. I counted them up and I forgot how many it was. But the axe heads are especially those broad axes right in the front row there. I mean, that's a pretty expensive piece of equipment. And why are they left out there? And I this is probably half of what I've got. When I took this picture, it was cold, and I just I've got a deck house out in the back, or a boathouse, and I had these upstairs, and I could have added a few more.
Well, you never know, Terry. A guy could have been out there chopping some trees down, and the Indians could have got after him. And he said, "Heck with that!" He said, "This axe is too heavy to carry. I got to scoot."
There's a story of I think it was like 6 or 8 Indian fellows, young fellows, that come up and wanted to join the Ojibwe tribe up here, and the tribe wanted nothing to do with them, And anyway, they ended up wiping out, a couple farmsteads, and so we've had that problem up here too. These are horseshoes, and then in the front row, these are oxen shoes. The oxen have a split hoof, so when you find one of them, takes 2 to make a full set, but and that's a neat recovery, and oftentimes too. Now the horseshoe would be hung up over the door,
Right.
and it would be hung facing up, so the good luck would not fall out, and that was a piece that there's all kinds of folklore stuff that it's kind of interesting when you get into that stuff.
Yeah. And all you folks out there watching, if you got a question, pop it in the chat. Terry will answer it.
Yeah, in fact, if anybody wants any of this stuff, I met a fellow from the historical side, head of the historical society this last week in North Dakota, and I asked him if he wanted a bunch of this stuff. And what's really sad, and this picture here, see those irons in the back there, these flat irons?
Yeah.
4 of them over there. And I grew up on a farm. We didn't get electricity until I was in 5th or 6th, 7th grade. We didn't have electricity. My mother had irons like that. I find some really old antiques that I'm very familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got electricity to our farm, the only way we got it was we had to put in our own poles. And then it was just a real big deal when we got our first radio, and we could listen to the radio and that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you said, Terry, that flat iron was an expensive piece of equipment for these people.
Exactly.
And why is it, unless they got, had to leave in a hurry and left the stuff, who knows?
That could be too, if they got burnt out or if they got some kind of disease, they didn't have, there's a tombstone. I'm going to show you a tombstone towards the end here, but tell you a story about that. But that's the flat irons. And like I said, my mother used them. The one on the front there, where that's got that's probably a newer one because that handle can be taken off. The other one, and then on the other side are lanterns. I mean, I find those by the lantern tops, right to the right of the picture, and I used those for years. 6th, 7th grade, we were using, those types of lantern tops. So I'm very familiar with them. In fact, if you turn them up too high, they get black. This thing, I'm going to tell a little story about this thing. I'm going to hold this buckle up. And when I found it, this little, what do you call that? The pin or something like that was on the end of it, And I figured, boy, that is really a strange buckle, a real strange buckle. And I brought it all the way home. And then when I got home, I realized that the tongue of the thing had moved. And I'm looking at a regular buckle. So I sent a picture to Fred with it on the end there and said, I really found a strange buckle. And Fred come back and told me that it had to be a narrow strap for that. And then I said, well, I figured out that it's actually a regular buckle. And so I got fretted a little bit anyway.
Terry, now have you found any bottles or glass?
Tons of them. And every one of these places out there have got toilets. And none of these toilets have been done. None of the outhouses. There's a lot of places there'll be like a 4-foot square and it'd be down maybe a foot, 2 foot. And that's a cellar hole, a toilet hole. And none of them have been dug up. So there'd be tons of bottles out there. Find a lot of tobacco cans, lids and that stuff. And not a lot of bottles, but I find a lot of glass, pieces of glass and that stuff. And that's wide open for somebody who's interested in doing that.
And we got a question from James Habovic. Terry, have you ever found any musical instruments like harmonicas in the cellar holes? He says, your buddy Jim, Melbourne Beach.
Yes, I have. I found you won't go a week detecting cellar holes without finding 5 or 6 harmonica reeds. The harmonica was a big thing then. You find them.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the most common, not the only thing that I find. I'm sure they had other instruments, but the harmonica was a biggie. And this thing here is a swastika. And I found that at a cellar hole. And that was really interesting. That's the pin. I don't know what the pin was used for, but they were right together. But that swastika, that was before World War II when Hitler, made it very unpopular. But the swastika back then was for good luck. It was a sign of good luck.
Yep, it was indeed.
A while back, Florida, one of the news TV stations did Florida on a tank full and interviewed me. And they seen that swastika in my display and told me to take it out. They didn't want to have that shown. It would offend people. So, and this is a powder horn, powder flask. And I brought it right here. I found this out at the cellar hole. And I also found the barrel of, a musket barrel. And the barrel is bent a little bit, so that it went through the fire. Fred and Jim and some of my buddies say I should have it restored, and I may do that somewhere down the line. It's very ornate and it's neat. It's really a piece of history. It really is.
Yeah.
And boy, did that.
They usually weren't that ornate, were they?
Not usual, no. In fact, a lot of them, are actually made from powder, from a horn, ox horn or a cow horn.
Yeah.
That's where they get the powder horn, and so this is actually a powdered flask. When you use the right terminology.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim Naylor said when you got electricity, those flat irons became door stops. I had some in my house.
Okay. Well, Jim, you're showing your age there, buddy. You know what's going on. This is a musket barrel, and this was laid right on top of the ground at one of the cellar holes. It was grass kind of growing around it and that stuff, but it was not buried. It was down by the water. And I must have went over that thing a dozen times and wrote it off as a pipe. And one time I picked it up, and then I could see the work on the nipple and that on the back side of it. So it's actually the barrel, and it's bent a little bit. So I think it went through a fire, and that's why it was discarded. Now this is a story where out there in the woods there's a grave, and this Edith Martin, and I think she was born in 76 and died in 87. And at the very end, there's a statement that the rumor was that Edith had drowned and they never recovered the body. And for some reason or other, this gravesite just drew me. And as when I was in high school, I used to stop out, walk back to the woods a little ways, and visit Edith. It's just really weird. I did that. When my wife and I started going together, I had to take her out and show her Edith. All my brothers knew about Edith. We all did it. And then it was several years back now. I was out there, and this was what I was detecting now. And I'm looking at that, and I look at the lake, and all of a sudden it dawned on me they had to find the body. I've handled probably 20, 30 different drownings when I was in law enforcement when we recover the body. In Minnesota, the lakes here are really not that deep. And when the water temperature raises to a certain temperature, the bodies will come up. So they had to have found the body. And so I was going to do started to investigate, and I actually got a hold of a reporter who was actually the lady that owned the part of the trading post. And the story was that Edith had actually died of a some kind of virus or some cholera or something like that. So I got real interested. So flip to the next one. Okay, that's her dad. And I found her in another cemetery out in the middle of the woods. There's Edith is all alone. That's the only cemetery or only grave site out there. This one actually is listed as a cemetery, and there's probably, well, I'd say 10, 15 graves there. And this one is her dad. He was a soldier, and he's buried on the edge of the lake, so he's out overlooking the water too. And it's just something that I got interested in, and I wrote a story on it. But if you flip to the next one, and it said about a mile and a half from there, on the shores of Lake 5, under a clump of lilacs, a child's grave with the name of Martin. Folklore has it the child of Corporal E. Martin, who was drowned in the lake, and the child and her body were never found. The date of death was 1887. She was 11 years old. That is on one of the plaques on Corporal Martin's, his headstone. So that's what was believed for a long time, but it was not true. They had to find the body. Okay, this is a coin I found in the Red River, not the Red River, the Ottertail River last year. And I didn't get detected there a lot, but look at the size of that coin. And that turns out it's a Vietnamese coin, and it was dated about 1881. And it's just so unusual. I've never seen one, and I've never showed it to anybody that's seen one like it. But back in our area, the railroads were really big back in the day. And of course, the Chinese were brought in to work on these railroads and that stuff. And probably that's where it came from. But, Vietnam used to be part of China. And so that coin was minted in China, but it was a Vietnamese coin. And that's supposed to be the end. But there was another thing. Was there a couple pictures of spearing fish?
No, I didn't. He didn't put those in.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about on these lakes up here in Minnesota. It's a big thing to spear fish. In other words, what they do is they go out on the lake and on the ice, cut a square hole in the ice, and then they drop down and they have to put a dark building over the top of it so you can see. And you sit there and you take a decoy and run it around, just up and down. It goes in a circle. And when the fish comes in, you spear it. And at one of the cellar holes, I found this old fish decoy. And I got so excited about this. I mean, this was really a big deal to me, and I run over and showed it to several people, and none of them were very impressed with this. But this thing is made out of tin, and it had a rock wrapped in a rag inside for weight. And this is what they went out, and they take that out on the lake, cut the hole, sit there and jiggle this thing up and down. When the fish come in, they spear it down to the water and that stuff. And I've done that for years. In fact, my wife, on one of our dates, I took her out fishing at our Hythaland Lake years and years ago. And the limit back then was 3 fish. And I wanted my wife to spear a fish, and she wouldn't do it. And I got my 3 fish, and of course, back then I didn't have a conscience, so I was going to keep fishing. So I took the 3 up to my grandpa's place, and it was about a mile away. And when I come back, Jean had a couple more fish that she'd speared. And so I ended up taking 3 more up to my grandpa's place and 3 more. And I think she got 24 fish that day. The limit's 3, and we were way over. See? So I had to clean all these fish. We had a great big wash tub, kind of, not a laundry wash tub, but just full of fish fillets. And we went around to all the old ladies in town and gave them some free fish.
Well, that was good because you got them illegal.
Yeah, I feel really bad about it. I really do. And if you believe that.
So Terry, that fishing lure, how old do you think that is?
I would say that this has got to be mid 1800s at least. I mean, this thing is quite old, and I didn't know what it was. But look at the tail. How that's tin, and that doesn't. I think that's what would be tin and that stuff. But I want to restore it. And here's the fins.
Oh, that is cool.
I've got the other fin. And when it's curved. See, so when you pull it up and down, and as you pull it up, it'll turn, and it'll just go in a tight circle, and you just keep doing that, and until another fish comes by and tries to attack it, and you spear it. That's a very Minnesota thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a cool looking lure, I guess you would call that.
Yeah, it's. I have never seen one. I mean, I was really excited about it, and
Yeah, I would have been excited too, for sure.
well, thank you
It's
for
a
showing
piece-
interest. You're the first people that have.
Yeah.
To me, it's a piece of history, and I found older lures, but nothing like that. That's really cool.
There's things that I've walking short.
That's right. So this is what for the giveaway, folks. We're going to have 2 winners tonight, and you're each going to win a signed copy of Terry's new book about his law enforcement career. So this is what you put just like that in the chat to be entered, and so if everybody starts putting it in there. As we continue, and then we'll have a giveaway drawing here pretty soon. So, and Beat Quest, you got to put it in. We can't sign you up. You got to put it in just like it's written, everybody. So put that in there, and let's go back to now. Probably hadn't been in the Otter Tail so far this year, have you?
No, the water level was pretty low, and then when we come back, it rained steady for 3 days, and the water level is as high as I've ever seen. I'm going to go out this week, probably not tomorrow, but go out and at least check the depth. I can't handle it, the current is what affects me.
Mm-hmm.
But getting back
It's
to the
pretty cold too, isn't it?
but a little bit. I have to wear waders. There's leeches in the river, and I happen to be allergic to them. If I get bit by a leech, I will be in the emergency room. But this book, I was a county sheriff. I ran for sheriff, and I was a sheriff in Becker County, and my nickname was Pusser. And I got that when I first started. One of the first calls I got a call, and they said that there'd been a shooting, and 2 people had been shot. And there was a hostage situation going, and a state trooper was coming on out to my place to pick me up. And I remember I come running out. I had my rifle in that, and I come running out. I got in with the trooper, and I love to drive fast, but boy, I don't like to ride fast. And we go out 100 miles an hour up to this town, and about 30 miles north. And as we come over the hill, there was a house, and you could see guns sticking out the window, and then right across was a trailer house with other guns sticking out the window, and a body laid in between, and the whole area was surrounded by cops, and all I could think was, my God, I'm in charge. If I could have faked a heart attack, I'd have been gone. But what I ended up doing is breaking out a window with a bicycle, and the guy quit shooting. I was able to get the house emptied out, turned to blow it up, and I got up to the trailer house where the guy was at. And apparently somebody hit me with a 2x4. They said it spun me right around. And about that time, my deputy come up alongside the trailer, and they threw a carbineer out and hit him in the head, knocked him silly. And I just lost it, grabbed the bicycle, beat the window out, and dove in. And searched the house, couldn't find him. Turned out he was on top of the water heater. When I did find him, I was having a heck of a battle for the bottle. I got him to the door, and he got away. And he's running, me right behind him. And I tackled him, and I'm wrestling with this guy, and this other big Indian come running up and kicked him right in the head. And I stood up and hit the Indian. And anyway, I was Pusser from then on. That was my nickname. So that's where the walking short comes from. Kind of a long story.
It's very interesting. For sure.
My wife put up with a lot, but that book, I'm really proud of that book. It's the best book I've ever written, and I ever will write.
And that'll be a great, great book. And I will get you with the winners. I'll just send them directly to you, Terry, so you'll have them. You know where to go. Now, how deep is it generally in the Otter Tail when you're hunting in it?
Okay, on the Otter Tail, when I'm hunting in it, it's not a deep river. In fact, the Otter Tail, they used to log that back in the day. And this area here, where we're at right now, this area was part of the Louisiana Purchase. And on the Louisiana Purchase, they bought all the land west of the Mississippi. Well, up here, we have the Red River of the North. It flows north up into Canada, and they mistook that for the Mississippi, and so our area was in dispute. And so we got settled late, so we don't get the coppers and stuff like that up here. But there's a lot of white pine in this area, and they harvest these white pines, and what they do, they would dam up the otter tail about every mile, and as they floated the logs down, and the logs would go up to the dam, then they'd blow up the dam, and they'd go down to another until they got into Frazee. And so when you're up there in the otter tail, the average depth is probably waist high deep, but there's several holes that are deep, and I don't think there's anything much deeper than 10 feet at the most. And a couple of years we've had the water level go way down, and I could get into a lot of these holes. And on the one I found an Indian head, Indian arrowhead, and a musket ball in the same hole deep down. So there's a lot of history in that otter tail, a lot of history.
So Terry,
Yeah, I would imagine.
what detector are you using to do your cellar hole hunting?
I'm using the Deus too.
Okay.
And it that's been a good detector, and it gets incredible depth, but it also I can get into that iron, and it just, I'm so used to it.
Let's see. We got a question from Terry. We had a couple go real quick. Terry, you ever been asked to do a special on metal detecting on a major network like Discovery or History Channel?
Yes. I shouldn't be laughing, but that program, when they're looking for that treasure, Curse of Oak Island, they paid me $250 to interview me. And so I go down to Sebastian, and I took a bunch of artifacts, Spanish coins and different artifacts that I found. And I took my wife's ring. She gets first choice of the rings. And she has a box that holds 70 rings, and she has probably 140 in this box. And they took about 30 pictures of the rings. And when it aired on TV, I was cut out of it, and her rings were the only thing that they showed. So my wife has a very famous ring box. And then I was contacted by the History Channel last year,
Nice.
and they were going to do a special. And I sent them a whole bunch of emails and pictures and that stuff. And what happened, it got put back so far that they wanted to interview me and Beach Detective, but also the boats that would go out there. And they got too late. So I don't know if they're going to do it again or not this year. And if they do, they'll call me. Certainly, I'll probably come down for it.
Well, we had a suggestion, Terry, from the Mumbles Man and from Ricky T, whom you both know. And they said, what about having Gene write a book? That'd be a bestseller.
All the secrets,
yes. She's put up with me for 65 years. Her favorite saying is that you did what?
Well, it would probably be anticipated even more so than the Epstein files. What can I tell you?
Well, we've had, since when I was up in Minnesota, we've lived in 3 different houses. All 3 of them have been shot up where people can buy and shot into the house. And one time my wife and I were coming back from a retirement party for the police chief up in Moorhead. And I had just made a whole bunch of arrests on these dopers. And this carload of dopers pulled up alongside me. And I had seen them coming, and they were right on my tail. I kept speeding up until I had a Jeep Wagoneer, and 90 was as fast as we go. They pulled up alongside me. I grabbed Jean, threw her down on the floor, and I had taken my gun off. I had it in the shoulder holster. I had it between the seats. I had trouble getting it out, but as soon as I got it out, I intended to shoot the guy, and because they took off. We were doing 90, and they just left me like I was standing still. But the guy woke up the next morning with my shotgun on his nose, and he was really sorry he did that.
Hey, Tom Becker says those shows don't know what they're missing by not having you on, Terry, for sure. Tom was right on that. So, Terry, when you're out digging in the cellar holes, what accessories do you take with you? What accessories? Shovels, pointers?
Oh, yeah, I use a shovel, of course, and a bag. And I also have a thermos with this what electrolytes and that stuff. That's really important, and a pinpointer, and the pinpointer, because there's just so much stuff in there. You have a pinpointer, uh, that's the main thing: the shovel, the pinpointer, the detector, and a big bag. And I take a pail out there. I have a big pail, and I normally take a sandwich because I spend the day, and I fill that pail up. And then all the garbage that I find, or almost all the garbage I find, I try to haul it out. I just feel funny. These people are nice enough to let me hunt their land, or detect their land. I'm just not going to leave a bunch of garbage out there that I could remove. But I've also got a couple piles that I've got to haul out yet.
Well, we're getting down to the dregs of the shows here, so we need to do a giveaway, a couple of them. So let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here's one. The first one. A dirt clod metal detecting. Very good, very good. And the second one is going to be Grammar Time, Mr. Moonlight Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Moonlight Graham. So you all know what to do to, I'll put it up here just to, so you have it. Name, address, and phone number to treasuretalkshow@gmail.com. And I'll get it up to Terry. He will sign a book for you and get it to you, and it will be a collector's item, and I promise you it's going to be one of the best reads that you've ever had.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well,
so you get that to me soon. The sooner you get it to me at treasuretalkshow@gmail.com, the sooner I'll get it to Terry, and the sooner you get your book.
I'll get it in the mail the same day I get it, from you. So one of the things, before I forget it again, I've got to tell one more story I think is very, very important. Last year, when I was metal detecting out in the cellar holes, I got bit by a deer tick. And I got violently ill. Had to take me by ambulance to the hospital. And my wife years ago got bit by a deer tick, and she was in intensive care for 7 days in the hospital for 20, or not 20, but I think 3 or 4 more. And they told her that she was the sickest they've ever seen anybody that lived. And she has no side effects. I ended up getting Lyme disease, and I am suffering from a lot of side effects. I got vertigo, headaches. It's really a pain in the butt. And it's been a year, and I'm still suffering with those things. And there's a repellent out there called Premagen or Premagen. Do you know how to pronounce that? My intention was to bring a bottle of it here to show everybody. But on this spray, you spray your pants and your socks and your outfit that you're going to wear. And then it's just very important that you do that. Those deer ticks, they're a heck of a lot tougher than walking short is, that's for sure. And they're supposed to last through 5 washings. I don't trust them. I spray it, my legs don't every time now. But, take some precaution out there. Those ticks are bad.
Yeah, they are. They carry all kinds of diseases too.
Permethrin, Permethrin. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew put it in the stream there. Permethrin.
Yeah.
And if you do, now didn't they tell you this too, Terry? If you do get a tick on you, don't just yank it out because you leave his head inside, and that's going to fester and infect you as well. Correct?
I believe that, but on my tick, I never seen it. I never knew that I was bit, and on my wife's, we never seen it. We didn't see a bump or anything like that. We just got bit, and apparently someplace where you can't see, and they fell off on their own. But boy, did we get sick.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's Permethrin. I think I'm getting pretty close to it. Look it up online and spend the money and buy that. It just
right, to protect yourself, especially when you're out there in the woods and ticks are everywhere.
Well, yeah, any kind of your mosquito spray and all that kind of stuff. You really need that kind of stuff because it can get really bad.
Yeah, I mowed my yard last week, and I come in to change clothes and I had a tick on my leg already. From my yard, for God's sakes. I mean, up here we have them bad, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because it's so. What did you think, or is it just? Are they just now coming out because spring is?
I don't know. You know, it's amazing. You'd be absolutely amazed at the amount of stuff I don't know, Jeff. But I learned much more than most people because I learned it on Monday, and then I got to learn it again Wednesday. But I really thank you for having me on the program. It's great. You guys are great, and
Well, we appreciate you, Terry, and I'm
show you-
watching. Oh yeah, I see that shirt. That's a nice shirt for sure.
the body ain't much, but the shirt's really nice.
I read all the comments, and everybody's thanking you for being on here for sure. Jane Havovic says, Terry, looking forward to having you back this winter here at the Treasure Coast. So everybody's saying that in the feed. So
People have been so good to me; it's just unreal. I mean, if a person's wealth was judged by the friends that you enjoy, I'd be a wealthy person. I'm a wealthy person, you know.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to it. I'm contemplating. I've been asked by a number of people to have another Treasure Tales special show, but I think I'm going to have it on the West Coast, and I probably will have it somewhere like maybe Fort Myers or somewhere down there where even in the like November or something, it'll be warm enough you can get in the water. And of course, you and Fred's going to have to come over, Terry. You know,
We wouldn't miss it.
and then we can go hunting, and you know, you and the Terminator.
See, I don't mind hunting. I'm not afraid of sharks or anything like that. What bothers me more than anything is Fred's driving.
Is the what?
Fred's driving.
Fred's driving.
Oh well, Josh,
He
hey,
does wonders for my religion, you know.
the last time he was down there, he drove out, you know, Fort DeSoto, and yeah, yeah.
No, he's very good. I just like to give him some crap.
Yeah.
I was going to talk too about these Constola bells, and I forgot about that. You know, from the
Yeah,
wagon.
let's talk about them. We got time.
Okay, well, these bells, I'm having trouble pronouncing Constoga or something like these wagons. And what they did is these bells were put on the wagons, kind of like the crone bells. And it was a big wagon. You know, they'd have like 6 horses, one of them, you know, and they'd have a row of these bells on the back. They had like 5 of them on the back. And then the next lineup would be have 4, then 3 on it. And that's where the expression, you know, when you get someplace you're there, you ride with bells on, you know.
Bells on. There you go.
And the rumor was if you ever was out and you got stuck with your wagon and another wagon come by and helped you out, you had to give them your bells.
Ah, interesting.
That is an interesting story, you know, the history.
Very interesting.
You know, it's just, but this
Yeah,
is,
it's a nice big bell too, for sure.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
glass. Well, Terry, it looks like our time's just about up, so I wanted to thank you for sure. Well, there's another bell. And thank you to the many members who are on here enjoying this program with us. And thank you, Jeff and Jocelyn.
Thank you all, folks. I sure appreciate it. And thanks, Jeff and Phil.
Well, let's show Big Poppy's artwork. Just show a close up.
That's Big Poppy.
Now, if you gave that away, I mean, you'd have a whole bunch of people in there.
Oh yeah.
That's art.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
Lord.
indeedy. Well, Tara, I can't thank you enough. You're always there when we need you, and everybody loves you. And I want you to be safe and be careful up there.
And no more ticks.
And no more ticks and no other various critters. And give Jean a hug for us and tell her that we're looking forward to seeing you guys when you get back this fall. And so make sure you drive safely when you come back down. And we will definitely get together and with the Terminator and get some hunting done. So
Sounds great. Look forward to it.
everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight. Like I said, if the 2 winners get your name, address, phone number, to me at treasuretalkshow@gmail.com. I will get it to Terry. He will sign the book personally for you and get them out to you. And it don't get no better than that. It's going to be a collector's item. I'm telling you right there. Plus, it'll be the best read that you've ever had. So make sure that you get that done. Next week, we're going to have, I believe it is Carter Pennington from Detector Pro. We're going to find out what's going on with Detector Pro. And then on the 23rd, Merrill from XP Deus is going to be here, and we're going to be talking about the HF coil, which is starting shipping.
Starting to get here,
right now.
yes, for sure.
Phil is, hopefully by then he'll have
A bunch of them, hopefully.
a bunch of them, but we're going to talk about that. So we will see you then, and always remember one thing. If Phil doesn't have it in stock, you don't need it.
You don't need
Happy
it.
hunting, everybody, and dig deeper, and we will see you soon. Thanks for watching.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.